going over chapters 5 and 6, and my name is Christelle.
My name is Jamit.
My name is Alejandra.
My name is Valeria.
And my name is Madeline.
So we're going to start with chapter 5, which is roles in groups. The objective for today is to understand the roles in groups, their traits, and how important each role is. So chapter 5, vocab. So group roles are a pattern of expected behavior associated with the parts in roles in groups. Norms are rules set by the group for all group members to follow, and role is creates expected behaviors for each individual group member. So I'm going to start off with influence of roles and role status, playing by hierarchical roles. So role status is the relative importance, prestige, or power according to each group role. And this could be, for example, a teacher has a greater status than a student does. So these status differences can not always be respected. And this tends to happen more nowadays because of the social media era, and which creates status equalization effect, which is a leveling of role status among group members. And this can happen because you don't have that one-on-one in-person interaction with seeing their gestures, their posture, what they're wearing, etc. And giving power to roles can cause potential abuse. For example, parent-child, doctor-patient, teacher-student, and this could be when there isn't an equal distribution of power amongst the group. One person has more power than the other. And then differences in role status can cause discontent, and results from a survey of 2,100 physicians and nurses responded with 98% of them witnessing bad behavior. And one of the nurses even said that she felt degraded and it affected her mental health. And not only does it affect the nurses, but also the patients that are witnessing the situations happen. And then role conflict torn between two roles. Role conflict is playing roles in different groups that contradict themselves. So for example, a student with a child, they might have a test the next day and they need to study, but they have a sick child. And when we conflict between these two roles, we always pick the most important one. So continuing on with influence of roles, role reversal is when students become teachers. Role reversal is getting a different or complete opposite role from what you are used to playing. For example, student to teacher or child to parent and vice versa. And these roles reversing can promote appreciation of constraints of roles in your behavior. Because, for example, as a student, we tend to always blame the teacher for why they are doing things the way that they are doing it. And it's not until we get into those teachers' shoes that we understand why they do the things that they do.
And the next section was role adaptability. And playing roles is a fluid and dynamic process in a group. Everyone in a group is interconnected, so your actions will significantly affect the other person in the group. One of the first topics in this chapter was role flexibility, meaning you're able to adapt to your content. And this means the capacity to recognize the current requirements of the group and then enact the role-specific behaviors most appropriate in given context. So for example, if you're in a group of 4 people and you have a role of taking notes, but then one person is absent, you're going to need to take on that second role. So you're going to have to adapt to your current situation. And also another example would be if your discussion goes off topic, then a member needs to refocus a conversation. And the member who refocuses the conversation is the person who is showing role flexibility. The second topic was role fixation, which is failure to adapt. So an example that's related to this class would be like if we're in like a group project and one of us is supposed to only be in charge of a section, and then the other person doesn't do that section, someone's going to need to step up to, or if they don't step up to do that section, then it affects the whole group. And this means the acting out of a specific role and that role alone, no matter what the situation might be. So an example would be a professional comedian sometimes doesn't know when to be serious in a social gathering. Another example would be lawyers who question their spouses due and hostile witnesses in court. The lawyer's role, he's taking the role of him being a lawyer to his household, which he wasn't supposed to, because you wouldn't question a criminal like a witness or someone the same as you would a spouse. Role fixation can also cause conflict, because if there's two people, let's say you got moved to another group where there was two people taking notes now, and you chose to only take notes, now you're going to be the source of conflict because you don't want to change your role to adapt to your content.
So the next and last section of chapter 5 is newcomers and system disruptance. And the first part of this section talks about the nature of the group, or the challenge of acceptance. And the acceptance of a newcomer turns out being more easier in a group that has been around for less time than a group that has been together for a good amount of time already. And this is due to earlier groups still going through the development process when the newcomer enters the group. There are several characteristics that affect the acceptance of newcomers. One is the level of group performance. When the group is doing well, the group members in that group already might not want to affect or change that balance, so they won't take the acceptance of a newcomer well. Another characteristic that affects the acceptance of a newcomer is groups with fewer members, because the number of members, because groups with fewer members would be more likely to be open to an acceptance of a newcomer. A vocab word in this section is hazing, which is any activity expected of someone joining or participating in a group that humiliates, degrades, or abuses or endangers them. And the next part of this section talks about mutual adaptation to change. And another vocab in this section is group socialization. And group socialization is the communication process in which new and established group members adjust to each other. And this ties in with newcomers as well, because newcomers must have a prior knowledge and skills to be able to communicate effectively with their new group. And there are multiple things that newcomers can do to get higher chances of being accepted into their new group. And something that they can do is conduct research on the group to see if they would be a good addition to it. Embrace their new group and distance themselves from previous groups that they have been in. Seek mentors in the group to assist them, and possibly work with other newcomers in the group because they might not be the only one.
So now we're going to be going over chapter 6, which is group leadership, and the objective for today is leadership and traits.
So leadership emergence. This concept basically talks about how to be a leader in a group, even if no one in that group is specifically given that title or role. So the first part is basic things to avoid in being a leader. So as a leader, you want to be focused on the group's goals rather than your own self-focused goals. This means things like your own grade and evaluation rather than the group's, because as a leader, you're supposed to make sure everyone gets a good evaluation and the group as a whole gets a grade, not just yourself. So you want to make sure everyone does well. And then as a leader, you want to make sure everyone's issues are heard and resolved, because your issues aren't the only thing you should be focusing on. In a group, everyone's issues are shared when it comes to a project or PowerPoint or whatever it is. And then next, a leader should not be lacking in commitment and participation. Those who are typically seen as a leader have the highest amount of participation and I'll be explaining this further. And next, you don't want to be interrupting speakers, and the book says it really well when it says leadership is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. This means the leader does not just command other members to do this or that. Everyone has their right to share and speak about what they want to do. And as a leader, you have to hear and include it if possible. And if not, you want to say no, but have a reason and make sure everyone's satisfied with it. Next, you want to keep an open mind as everyone has their own inputs and ideas that they want to bring into the project, and you want to make sure everyone is heard and, if possible, put it in. And then, as a leader, you want to have good control over your emotions. It's okay to have personal feelings, but don't let it affect the group. You don't want to bring in personal problems and ruin the group dynamic. So in the group, make sure you're focusing on the project and not your own issues. So some ways a group leader is chosen: the people who present the problems, which I just talked about, are usually eliminated from the choice. Unless it's one or two, then they can still be seen as a leader. And then even if no one's seen as a leader and no one's given that title, whoever the group usually turns to for a solution when problems occur are who they typically see as a leader. This is because they trust them more and they rely on them to make the right decision, which is typically seen as a leadership trait. And next, whoever has the most participation and involvement will typically be seen as a leader. This is simply because they're more the members see this person more. They have a better understanding and they're able to trust that person more than they are someone who isn't there as much. So involvement is really important in order for someone to be seen as a leader. So some random facts: women and minorities have a harder time being seen as a leader. And on a survey, it showed that most people, when they think of a leader, they typically think male, which is white. And then 4% of 200 business executives qualify as psychopaths. But this is typically more so because of their character traits like confidence and charisma more than them actually being psychopaths. And yeah.
My chapter was Perspective on Effective Leadership, and it talks about how to be an effective leader. Leadership is a process by which a person leads and influences others. When being an effective leader, does not only allow the group to achieve, but it allows you to continue being a leader. Being a leader, when being a leader, you must demonstrate your capability to the group. You must take responsibility, take constructive criticism from your group, and be open-minded. Groups prefer a leader that helps them and that are involved and are always listening to what the group has to say and make some sense. The second chapter that I did was Traits, Perspectives, the Born Leader View. And in this chapter, this is where they talk about two different perspectives, which are if a born if a leader is born and if a leader is made, which is okay. I will be talking about um when the leader is born. The viewpoint views leader as a person and not a process. Some believe that people are born being leaders. The concept talks about how there are common traits that leaders share, and they believe if you are born with those traits, that you will become a great leader. Traits are relatively enduring characteristics of an individual that highlight differences between people and that are displayed in most situations. Examples: there are traits about your personality, like being outgoing, an extrovert, social, and like vice versa. You could be shy, introverted, and quiet. There are consistent behavior traits where there is intelligence and being able to